Welcome to the podcast, where street smart, business smart, all kinds of smart people share their insights into the world of marketing, career journeys, and personal growth. So sit back and prepare to get enlightened with your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal and life growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your life forward. My guest today, Seth Elliot, is an intuitive, spiritual business coach. We'll figure out what all that means in a little bit. He's a medium, a life healer, speaker, author, and a life and death expert. And he talks a lot about bereavement and everything involved there. And his vision is to inspire the world, one by one, to smile from the inside. And he has a great deal to say, the basis of which is know who you are, embrace who you are, and be who you are, no matter what the circumstances or what your past. And you can heal from anything. And we're really going to get into it. And especially in what's happening in today's world with the uncertainty and everything, it's certainly a good time to talk to Seth. A little bit on his backstory. And by the time he was 32, he already cheated death 3 times, narrowly escaped 2 kidnappings. That's insane. I want to hear about that. And lost 5 good friends within a very brief period of time. Tough for anybody. And we really want to talk about how that not only affected him at that time, but what he's done to really harness it, unpack it, and pay it forward. And being unprepared for those events, he searched everywhere to find a resource that would help him and to no avail. And he said, you know what, I'm going to figure this out myself. And he developed the SMILE method, which we'll talk about. And he wrote his first book, How I Learned to Smile from the Inside. We're going to talk about that, talk about trauma, bereavement, death, life, all that more. And I'm thrilled to have Seth on the show today to showcase his unique charisma and that New York, New England. And we're going to see if he's a Patriots fan, Giants fan, no football fan. But we're going to bring out his swag. Here we go. I'm done talking. Seth Elliot, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and honored to be here.
That was a very long-winded intro. But I feel like I had to get it out. It was inside. It was stuck in there. I wrote it. It was in my head, and now it had to come out. So let's start things off here. Why don't you help me bring my tribe up to speed on your story? How did we get from where we were to where we are today? Let's bring everyone into the world of Seth Elliot.
It's a good question. If we had maybe hours, I could tell you, but no, just kidding. The abridged version, right? So when I was 4 or 5, I remember exactly what I was doing, what I was wearing, and where I was. And I knew that I wanted to change the world, and I didn't know how, right? So it was either going to be being a fireman, it was going to be a lawyer, an actor, or a figure skater, because for some reason at 4 or 5, the young gay boy still was really into the figure skating.
The conflicting between firefighter and figure skater, somewhere in the middle there.
So I led my life searching for how to change the world. And, I thought, so I was a huge overachiever. I think that's partly because I was gay and bullied and all that stuff. So I think that had quite the effect on what I wanted to show the world, not that I'm better than, but I know a secret sauce, or I wanted a secret sauce that I could then tell the world, and share with the world. So, going up in my teens, and then I graduated high school early because I just wanted to get into, I thought Broadway was my way into, being super famous, and then going back and really helping the world, right? So I was modeling and acting and singing and stuff in New York, but that didn't really work out. So my parents were very smart. They always instilled upon me a plan B, right? So, has been corporate America for the past 22 years. And that's where the kind of the business in corporate America part of what I do comes into play, So I was in New York. I literally had an existential crisis when I was 24. And so I became a yoga teacher and worked at a spa and became a certified coach. And so I've been doing that for 15, 16 years. But during that time, I started to realize this is what I want. I want to help people one-on-one, right? It wasn't until much later that I learned, no, I want one-to-many. Like, I don't want this one-to-one kind of stuff.
Right.
I was going to say shit, right? Excuse my French. But yeah, so I left New York, came to LA, and I once again started in corporate America, started acting and modeling again here in LA. which I don't normally admit to people. I don't know why I'm on that front today, but anyway.
Is it that everybody in LA, or they're a bartender or waitress, aspiring actor?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing.
Right.
Like I'm a intuitive business coach. I'm a medium. I'm a healer. I'm a Reiki person. Like you have to have at least 4 or 5 things. Otherwise,
what level Reiki are you? That's what's most important.
Yeah.
I'm a level 27. We'll just get there.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm 44. I'm not a master, but I can do. I'm a practitioner.
Right.
I think they're.
All good,
my
man.
husband, he's the master and can teach. Anyway, yeah. So and it wasn't so easy getting from New York to LA either, right? Like that's when the 5 friends passed away, like in the 2 years before I left, 3 years before I left, and then coming to LA. I was 26, 20-ish, and I really wanted to still change the world. I just didn't know how to do it, And so enter into my 30s. I woke up one day when I was literally turning 30 and I wasn't making the 6 figures and I wasn't in a relationship and I wasn't having kids or married. And I got really depressed for a couple days, and I mean, it was probably one of my lowest points in my life. And I just decided, you know what? Instead of, I was listening to everything and the law of attraction, all that stuff was in my life, but it was on the periphery, right? And then I started to understand that I needed to start using goals and objectives and what that was going to be like. And my vision has been and always will be, to, as you said, to inspire the world to smile from the inside. But I wasn't doing anything about that. So I'm like, how do I get from here to there? I literally wrote a list on my phone and on paper and in my computer of everything I wanted to do, everything I wanted. And within 3 to 6 months, I was making the 6 figures. I wasn't married, but I was traveling. I was doing half of everything that was on that list.
You were on your way. You were on the right path.
Yeah. Even and we all get stuck sometimes and we all struggle with where we are. And I've learned that 20s are just a time to fuck up, right? 30s is the time to kind of pay for that and start to get your life together. But 40s, I think for me, is where you're like, I don't really care anymore. I just want to have my shit together and build family and friends and really make a difference now,
I hear you, man. I'm on a very similar path, dude. I just turned 41 last week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and like I completely agree with you on that. Like if you want to put like a marker or a timestamp on it, the 40s are when you're really focusing on the things that are important to you and weeding out a lot of the shit in your life that's just making all that noise. So I want to kind of bump up the story and really get into, it sounds so crazy, the death side of it too. And your experiences with death and why you're trying to change the narrative and perspective. So let's pull back the curtain. Let's talk about your experiences with death and how that's resonated with you and really changed everything.
I love death. I know it's very strange to say, but I love everything to do with death. I'm even creating a TV show about it right now. There's just, there's something about it. By the time I was 8, everyone on my mother's side had passed away, like everyone, except the only living relative, it was my aunt, who's still alive, thank God. And so by the time I was 8, I had such an understanding of people die. Everyone dies.
Right.
Then fast forward, till my early 20s, I had a couple friends pass away, and some really good friends and family members. And it was like, okay, this is like, I noticed at that moment that I went through this little pattern. It was really strange, but I waited about 2 weeks. Actually, literally the SMILE method, I can just bring it in here because it just makes sense here. But so I found that I was in shock always for like 2 weeks. So, and it was the time that I just was trying to figure out why this happened. What really, like, this is my life. Like, how can you have died? All that stuff. Even a 17-year-old that I knew. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
Okay. So, and then I realized at the 2 week mark, I have this thing what I call mock-acceptance, which is the M for the SMILE method, right? It's part denial, part acceptance. It's the part where you have to get shit done, right? So it's the part where someone dies in your life, you have to plan the funeral, you have to plan the memorial service, you have to sit shiva for 50 days, everyone's coming to your house. You know that there's something major that you're kind of dealing with, but you're also kind of in acceptance and denial at the same time, right? So then I realized that after that moment, of when everyone leaves the house, you know, and you're watching a Netflix, right? It's when the in overwhelmed stage, so the significant, poignant emotions and the feelings happen, and no one likes this part, but this is when you cry. This is when you laugh hysterically, and then it turns to crying hysterically. This is where you feel like shit, you feel raw, and I have to tell everyone that it's the most important part of dealing with death and dealing with any type of loss.
Hitting the bottom.
Yeah, and it's because you have to hit that place to understand anything else that happens to you, and it helps you to deal with everything else that happens in your life. You know, because loss is loss, right? Granted, death is obviously kind of an exaggerated.
One of the ultimate losses.
Right, one of the ultimate losses. Good.
Extreme.
Good that. Yeah. So I find that you have to go through that, and I feel like a lot of people get stuck here because they don't feel the emotions, they don't want to feel the emotions, and so they can never get to the other parts, right? And the next part is learning, for L for learning. It's the insight, it's the reflection, and it's the learning from whatever happened. Now, it's easier to talk about learning from losing a job or relationship, because, you know, I saw the signs at my job, I wanted to get out, or in a relationship, like, I know what I don't want, I know what I want.
Writing's on the wall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you begin to understand and you begin to see awareness, like literally physically see awareness of what you're going through, right? And this is where most people get stuck here, because no one takes the time to understand and to reflect on what happens to them. Even with death, I mean, you can still even do that.
Right, but it's also, you have to take into account the circumstances of each death, right? And I think that's such a determining factor, and that relationship. Like, listen, you said it before, people die all the time, but people are sick, people are elderly. You know, there's certain extremes to that. So, you know, with this SMILE method, you know, is it one of those things where people are reaching out to you in their time of need, or is it like referral, or is it something that you're trying to also put out into the universe as a tool? It's a tool that you developed that you want to give as a gift to people along the way to help them cope, to help them heal, to help them learn and recover?
All of the above. It is in everything.
Okay, interview's over, and that's that. And thanks for coming on the show today.
It's in everything that I do. It's in every coaching session that I have. It's also in the mediumship at readings when I'm reading for deceased loved ones. It's helping people bereave, you know. Before we move on, I just want to the last stage in the SMILE method is E.
Oh, we're up to the E. The E.
Yeah. So embrace, right? Because we live in the 21st century, and acceptance is no longer good enough. You can't just accept what happened to you. You have to enthusiastically embrace what's going on. That means being grateful for what happened. That means being grateful that they're out of pain, if it's a dog or if it's a cat or an ant or a person, right? And it's getting to that point. And by the way, this is not like, sometimes it's not linear. Sometimes, like 2 weeks ago, I was triggered when I was talking about being kidnapped, right? Or being held at gunpoint, which I know we'll talk about. That always,
that's next on my list here.
But that always brings up emotion in me, and I deal with the emotion and I like let it be raw.
Yeah.
Then I move forward again. I'm like, I'm so grateful because I can help people now with traumatic experiences. You know?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, one of the things that I see most that I see right here on our interview, and like while I was doing my research, is this overwhelming optimism oozing out of every pore of your body. So how does somebody who's been through so much fucking shit, has been kidnapped, how do you keep that level of optimism? By the way, hold that cup up again. Hold that cup up. My daughter has that same cup in our cabinet.
No way.
The Frozen 1 movie cup. I'll send you a screenshot when I get home.
One.
Actually, yeah. I think I might have melted it in the dishwasher a couple weeks ago. But we digress here. We digress on the podcast. Let's bring it back, and we're ready for this one? We're gonna go from Frozen into being kidnapped. It's actually interesting because if you know the plot of Frozen, anyway. All right. We're gonna reset here. Let's take us back and let's bring my tribe up to speed here. It's pretty fucked up to be kidnapped once in life, but to be kidnapped twice is pretty crazy, or being held at gunpoint. Why don't we just kind of level set, and if you don't mind sharing those stories, if you don't mind going back to that.
Yeah, so when I was 19, 18, it was in Colombia, because I was super smart in my young youth. And my mother like forbade me to go to Colombia. I was living in Ecuador, studying in Ecuador, so I went to Colombia because that's what you do. And so we were leaving the city. I was super sick. We were on a bus, and I didn't realize that the cartels at that point, the guerrillas, were stopping every bus and taking people, just literally just taking people. I knew that this was happening, but like the coronavirus.
You didn't think it was going to happen to you, right?
Yes,
Not me.
You're like,
yeah.
yeah. So we're on the bus, they stop the bus, and I hear this little girl like scream in Spanish, guerrillas, guerrillas, meaning gorillas. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be fun. So I didn't bring my passport, my US passport on purpose. And so I had my Ecuadorian kind of ID, if you will. And they make everyone get off the bus. They're separating men and women, and they're basically holding guns to all the guys' heads across, like on the bus. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm about to die. What is my last thought? Like, that's literally what I was thinking. Like,
I mean, did you not think for a second, maybe I should have listened to my mom at that point? Like, that thought go? Why did I listen to my mom? I mean, like, it's like the Jewish mom thing. And like, now I have to go home and I have to hear this from her. Be like, Seth, why did you listen to me? I told you not to go on the freaking bus in Colombia. And you're like, oh, Mom, but there's a guy with a gun to my head. And
you have to have a Jewish mom for that. Cause for sure. She, I didn't tell them actually for about 5 or 6 years that this happened because I didn't want them to know.
So what happened in that situation? They came on the bus, they had the guns, they
they kept us all like with the guns to our heads. And I'm thinking, I want a family. I'm thinking I miss my family. And then it was about maybe 10, 15 minutes. They got what they wanted. They found the drugs. They literally just pulled the guy off the bus, like just took him away. And my friends, I was with 2 girls. They were like over there, and we kept looking at each other, but, and then they just like literally within 5 seconds, like we're like gone. And they're like, so
yeah, but it's so crazy, right? Like that's almost like everyday life down there during that time, right? And it's more like standard operating procedure, but you didn't know that. I mean, listen, some people that are down there, it's just like an everyday occurrence, and that's their way of saying hello, unfortunately. And they got what they wanted and they moved on. But like, I don't mean to make a joke out of this. This whole coronavirus thing has got me in this like weird state where like when I'm nervous or scared, my default mechanism is humor. Right. It's trying to make light of a situation. And I think that's like, one of the gifts that I give and one of the gifts that you give that I absolutely love is this level of empathy, right? That you're able to infuse into healing through your skills as a medium, which is freaking awesome. I love hearing stories. Leah, let's take it there for a second. Okay. How did you first find that you had that ability to be a medium? And why don't you give your definition for anybody who doesn't know what a medium is? Because I know the definition could vary a little bit between each
culture,
person who practices and culture.
Yeah. So for me, a medium is someone who connects with deceased loved ones. So let me explain it also in a way. Every medium is psychic, right? But not every psychic is a medium. So I believe that mediums can also connect with animals, living or dead. It's just par for the course. How I discovered it, I knew throughout my life that I felt things and knew things about people. I would play the silly game at parties where I would guess where they're from with like a 95% accuracy in terms of a state or country.
Without hearing them talk?
No, it would be within the first couple minutes. Yeah. But everyone would be like, oh my God, Seth does this really cool thing where you can guess where you're from. But little did I know that was way more than just me guessing, And then literally I woke up for the second time in about 4 years in 2 different relationships. And I said, I deserve better. And the second time I did that, I noticed that I broke a pattern. I felt different. And the next day I could not stop receiving information about people and their deceased loved ones. And
the portal was open. The portal was open.
Yeah. The gift then came, and the gift honestly keeps on giving, because I didn't know that I could read animals and cheetahs and elephants and all stuff. So it's been a process, and it's been 5 or 6 years now. And, I haven't really, you don't go to school for this. I mean, you can take courses and but the only way to do it is experience.
Do you have like a media mentor or somebody that you trust who has a similar skill and magical ability? And I mean magic in the best way possible, right? Like somebody that you say, like, are there methods that you use to harness it, control it? Because correct me if I'm wrong, because sometimes you can't block out the thoughts, and you may be walking by a stranger or somebody that you have a casual interaction with, and you're picking shit up on them. And like, how do you know when to engage? How do you know when to say, hey, random guy on the street, I'm talking to your dead like sister. Like it's a question that I have.
Yeah.
That I'm going to ask because I have a podcast and I get to ask cool questions like that.
I call them drive-by readings if I actually engage. I know that I'm going to have to engage when my heart starts palpitating and I can't focus anymore. So like I was on a date for Valentine's Day and I was sitting next to this woman and she was pregnant and the baby started talking to me and I was having a conversation with this guy that I kind of liked, obviously, and I could not handle it. So I said, listen, I have to do this. And I turned to her and I was like, hey, I don't know if you believe this in mediumship, but I'm a medium and I feel like I'm connecting with your baby. And then of course the whole table was like skeptics except for her. And I knew
she didn't freak out.
She didn't freak out. And the father, I didn't know this at the time, was across the way, but I knew that the father was like an absent father. And so you get information, you get a lot of information, and then you discern what to say to people, right? Because you never know who's around. So the first thing I was like, so who's Mary? And she's like, I'm Mary. And I was like, oh, cool. And the sister-in-law, whatever, was like, well, you could have heard us say that. I was like, okay, so you're 36 weeks pregnant. And I said, and you sing to the baby. The father travels a lot. And I said like 5, 6 different things. And she's like, holy shit, how would you know that? And I was like, call me for a reading. Here you go. Like,
yeah.
All I had to tell her was that she was so nervous about being pregnant, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a superpower, and you got to harness that powers for good. So let's talk about this cheetah story. I got to hear this cheetah story. And listen, man, animals get old, and I get really like I'm a stone cold New Yorker, and it takes a lot to kind of throw me off a little bit. But like when I see an old animal, right, I'm like, oh man, like that's an old like that animal lives such a long life, and like maybe they should have like retirement homes for them and shit. But like when a cheetah's out in the jungle and it gets old, like what does it do? I mean, again, I'm kidding here, but let's talk about this cheetah story. I'd love to hear it.
So my husband's from South Africa, right? We were on a tour. It's called the Cheetah Experience. It's down in Bloemfontein. And we were on this tour and he was very disappointed because, you know, we're walking around and these animals had major and incredible enclosures, but they were still caged in some way, you know? And we wanted to touch the cheetahs because that was our goal. So we're walking around and I start like, there's a black panther. No, black panther doesn't exist. I learned it's a black leopard. So we, but black leopard is not a good name for a movie.
Who said to everyone listening that you would not learn something on the podcast today?
I know it. Yeah. But anyway, so black leopard had something wrong with the back hind leg and I felt it. And so I was really curious about him. And then I felt something else with another animal that was there. We don't even have it here. Anyway, so in the United States anyway. So we're walking along and we get into this part where you're in with 2 cheetahs and you have to like put everything away. And the owner walks in and I had done some research before I went and I knew it was the owner. And she's asking everyone where they're from. And of course, I was the only person from Hollywood or the United States. And she said, oh, what do you do? And I was like, well, funny you should ask because I noticed that your black leopard has something wrong with the back hind leg. And I feel like it's only been bothering him for a couple of days, but there's something really going on. And she's like, how would you possibly know that? I was just telling my assistant that. And I was like, because we read people and animals. And she's like, what? So she sends off the rest of the tour and she brings us into this special cheetah area where there's like baby cheetahs running around, which are the cutest things.
You're like, we did it. We found the secret cheetah area. But this is your powers for good. Yeah.
No, and it's an amazing kind of ability. So she's like, I want you to read Mary. And I was like, who's Mary? And she's like, I'm not telling you. So we go in this enclosure with a trainer and she greets Mary, the cheetah first. And then she leaves us in there and she's like, you're fine here. She's not going to hurt you. And I was like, why is that? She said, because she knows she can kill you. So you're not a threat. And also, I wouldn't let anyone in here. She trusts me, whatever. So she's like, I want you to read her and tell me everything you get. I was like, okay. So my husband and I sit down with Mary the cheetah. And he's like, I'm like, oh my God, you know, like I'm trying to.
Nice kitty.
Him. Yeah. And he's like rubbing the head and she's licking him. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a cheetah. So the most amazing thing she said to me was, I have far less days ahead than I have behind. And I was like, what a beautiful way to look at life, you know? And she told me about her ailments. She told me about like how for 7 years she was away from this woman who trained her essentially. And then now she's back and she's super happy to be back, and you know, a couple things. And I wrote all these things down. My husband writes the whole thing down. And then afterwards, the owner comes back and she's like, okay, tell me what you know. And we told her everything. And she's like, you know, I've been curious, like I feel like she's come here to die, you know, or come back to me to die. And I was like, you know, and so we're getting teary-eyed. But then I just feel this other cheetah around, and I'm like, I've never felt a dead cheetah before. I felt a dead snake before, but I've never felt a dead cheetah. And so I started talking to her. I was like, why do I feel like there's another cheetah here? And I feel like she's 19, and she's like, oh my God, that was my first cheetah. She died like 8 months ago.
You felt the presence of the cheetah.
I did.
Yeah.
And so
literally Dr. Dolittle. You are Dr. Dolittle.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. And I didn't even know that I could do this. Like, I didn't know that speaking animals was part of the gifts, you know? So anyway, she was crying, I was crying. It was just a beautiful experience, you know?
I love it, man. You know, so you talk a lot about being a spiritual healer and a spiritual coach. And I personally, I'm fascinated by spirituality. I am not, you know, I'm Jewish by religion, but I don't practice it, but I believe in faith. I believe in the concept and spirituality. I also believe in auras and vibes. And how do you perceive the science of aura and vibes? And how do you think, you know, professional healers could incorporate it into organizations to help people out?
So
kind of a double-header question there. Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. So my husband is really the one. He sees auras everywhere, on everyone, and on everything. So he is definitely like more the person who's into auras. But to answer your question, there's, I think, this awakening, maybe not right now because of the health conscious time that we're in, but it has been coming for a while, that people are now into energy, and they're into feeling people, and they're into professional intuition, and they're, you know, and I feel like now is the right time to strike with getting into businesses. I'm an HR leader, right? So I've been head of HR companies and HR consultant. So it's easy for me to get in through an HR perspective and then start coaching people, and they don't even know what I'm doing. When I'm like, I feel like I'm seeing this image, you know, and I tell them the image, and so I can do it without even them realizing. You know, I'm about to hopefully start with this new client where they want me to build a coaching and mentoring program, and they know that I do intuitive business coaching and executive coaching as well. So to bring in aspects of this, you know, it's not right now. I'm not going into companies and saying I'm an intuitive business coach. I'm going into companies saying I'm an executive coach and HR lead, and I have incredible professional intuition. That's what I tell people.
Right. So how do you weave in the concept of energy, aura, and vibes into business coaching, right? Because most traditional business coaches, you know, you're going to do kind of a SWOT analysis of, you know, how someone operates. You're gonna find their strengths or weaknesses. You're gonna work on those. You're going to work on approaches, tonality, communications, and all that. And then you start to fuse in this idea of vibes, energies, and auras. Take us through how that plays into it, and how someone who is being coached could embrace those concepts and really use them as an advantage to drive their career forward.
Sure. So I tell people that I partner with my clients to reframe their past through using the present, helping them to re-engage, recommit in the present, and then helping them learn their own, to trust and understand their own intuition, and then therefore building a better legacy in future for themselves, but also everyone around them. So I specifically work with executives, CEOs, politicians, because eventually I want to work on the senators, prime ministers, presidents level, and help them popes, help them with their spiritual decisions, right, and their decisions. But what I do is I talk to people about the present and their present issues. And it's part therapy, part coaching, part intuition, mostly business. And because I have this business background, I can speak to them on any level, right? So we might set goals and objectives, like I've been taught to do so many times, and, you know, through coaching schools and certifications and stuff. But it's honestly what they're going through now, and through what they're going through now, or today even, we can delve into their past. We can delve into their future. We can delve into the present. And I don't need to do SWOT analysis with people because I can read them. Yep. So to answer your question,
competitive advantage,
I'm sorry, what?
I said that's your competitive advantage.
Exactly. And I weave in the intuition. So I start by saying, you know, I'm seeing this image of you on this ledge, or like I feel, for example, I have one client who says I'm his board of directors because I'm his mentor, I'm his friend, I'm his chairman, I'm his vice chairman, because I'm giving him all sorts of angles of different information. And he was
Right.
really wanting to get an investor. And I knew that in that room, there'd be a family and variety of people. And I knew there was one woman who would be really into the financials. I knew there was another guy who was into the creative side. And so I literally told him all this stuff before I even went in the room, that this is what I'm feeling. Now, he nailed that meeting, got the investment, you know, that stuff. Could he have done that without me? Of course. But did I help better prepare him? Absolutely. And I always tell people it's what they need to hear, not what you want to hear, right? So I'm not going to sit here and let you go on and on and on about anything.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about the correlation between mental health and spiritual healing. Mental health is, you know, the hot topic, the hot button. And I even hate saying it like that. I mean, mental health has been around for a long time. I think that we're just in a point of society right now where we're putting it on a pedestal in the forefront where it should be, because so many people have issues that they're either masking or they're not getting help for, they don't know how to ask for help for. But more importantly, it's about the awareness factor, being able to recognize certain things in your friends, your coworkers, people that you love, so you can help them get help. I think personally that there is a huge correlation between spiritual healing and mental health, but I'd love to get your perspective and viewpoint.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not an MD. I don't have training.
We got to put the disclaimer here.
Right. But I do, obviously there are people with severe mental health issues, right? Schizophrenia being one. But I always feel that some type of spiritual healing is always helpful. I also feel like people that are depressed can really do a lot with spiritual healing in any sense of the way. I also feel like this stuff that I'm into, the intuition, the psychic, the healing, can be powerful enough to help someone get off pills or feel better about who they are, their life. I mean, granted, I know that there are chemical issues, challenges for some people, but I tend to agree with you in the fact that I believe that this work can do wonders. I mean, I've worked with a lot of depressed people, and I've helped them to either get off pills or you know, obviously under supervision of their doctors, right? Another disclaimer, but also feel happier with themselves.
Yeah, and that's what's really critical there. And being happy leads me to talk about your book, quote, "How I Learned to Smile from the Inside," and you know how you believe that anyone could heal from anything in life. What drove you? This is a 10-part question.
Okay.
Now, what drove you to write the book? And for someone who's reading it, what's the key takeaway that you want them to walk away from afterwards?
Okay, so it's a long story how it started, but the short abbreviation is my partner at the time, he's seroconverted from HIV negative to HIV positive. And at the time I was traveling to Mexico back and forth, thus leading to how I was held at gunpoint the second time. And it was 24 hours to get there. And it took me 12 hours to get back to him. It's a long story, but as I was running back to him and making all these trains and planes and automobiles to get back to him, it occurred to me that I was about to go through something major. It was going to change our lives. We'd have to change everything down to never using each other's toothbrushes or whatever, you know? And I thought to myself, how cool would it be if I could actually separate myself and be aware enough to actually notate what I'm about to go through and what are the steps that I'm about to go through to get to a place of healing. Because I don't think there's any other way, and that's just me. And I hope that everyone eventually feels this way, but there's no other way to get through but to overcome everything you've been through, because otherwise you're not going to get up in the morning, and that's no fun. So the book started really literally me in a seat in a plane being like, what am I experiencing now? What do I feel now? What's going on? You know, so that's started. So I wrote the book in basically 2 chunks, one basically 6 months from that moment on. And I just literally wrote all the time. And then I took a break for a year, 2, broke up with that guy for many other reasons. And then I started to write it from a different perspective. And it was a personal memoir. And then I turned it into a self-help for other people. So key takeaways are these 5 steps, and awareness is key. So knowing what you're about to go through, knowing that you can go through it, knowing you've been through it before, having that awareness and having that understanding that you've been through this before is really where it's at. And obviously the premise is you can heal from anything and everything that happens to us.
I love it. Seth, what are you scared of?
Interestingly, it just happened. I was driving to Stonehenge in UK on the other side of the road in the rain in traffic with a stick shift on the other side of the road. That was what I'm scared of. Big spiders scare me. I think you're talking about big.
I fucking hate spiders, man. I hate spiders. I hate little bugs that could kill me. I hate venomous little spiders and all that.
Yeah.
What I find you to be very authentic just from our brief encounter right now.
Oh, thanks.
I feel it. I could hear it. I feel I absorb energy, I process energy, and there's many years of my life, and it kind of faded away a little bit, but I was able to absorb and feel negative energy coming either to me or from other people around me. I had a weird sense of it. I was very perceptive to negative energy. But getting back to my question, what does that word authentic mean to you?
I mean, it's being me 100% of the time, right? Being that the unique individual I am at every minute. And it's really hard for me to lie. Like I'm such a bad liar. Being transparent, being honest with people, just showing them who you are at every minute.
I love it, man. What is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
Meeting people where they're at.
What do you mean by that?
So, no, understanding that my 100% is not a lot of people's 100%, right? It could be people's 150, 180, Every conversation I have, it's about reading them first. And anyone can do this. If you walk into a room of bereaving people, you're gonna be like, "Hey, what's up, guys?"
Party time.
Right. I mean, I might do that, but then kind of understanding the energy that you're going into, and people give themselves away in their first couple sentences. So in every conversation of where they're feeling, how they're feeling. So it's reading a room or reading a person and understanding like if someone just loses their job, I'm not gonna be like, "What's up, man?" It's gonna be like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
That's what I mean by meeting people where they're at. I think that's the most important lesson I've learned.
I love it, man. And that's empathy. I mean, I think everyone has empathy in them. And I think that it's important to be able to dial it up, dial it down, like being in the right space for it and being able to really read a room. And that's an incredible piece. And last but not least, and I love to get every one of my guests' perspectives on this one, because for me, my North Star is what guides me. It's my magnet when I'm up and I'm down. And Seth, you've been through some shit, man. You've lost people close to you. You've been held up at gunpoint. You've been in some terrible situations. You've been through love. You've been through loss and all that. Cancer. On the flip side, you've found yourself. You found your calling. You found your higher calling and purpose, and you're giving so much back to life. So in good times, when you want to look up for gratitude, in shitty times when you need to pull yourself up. Seth Elliot, what is your North Star?
I feel like it's knowing that when I die, whenever that is, I mean, I know when that is because I have this weird way of telling when everyone's going to die, but that's another story completely.
How do I want to hear that?
It is, it's knowing that I helped a large majority of the world become more aware and heal from anything. And because people are so sad and depressed, not necessarily clinically, but just they have such sadnesses and they carry everything they've been through with them. And my wish and my North Star is to help people alleviate, relieve them of those burdens. Yeah.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Seth Elliot, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing and pulling back the curtain on your life and who you are. I certainly appreciate that. Where could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Where could they learn more about Seth Elliot?
Sure. So they can go on my website, IamSethElliot.com. They can go to SethSantoro.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Seth Santoro, and every single social media, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook. It's all I am Seth Elliot is the @ or the hashtag.
I love it, man. Seth, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I've had such a great time.
Great to meet you, man. And to everyone listening at home, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Please be sure to follow us on all the social media channels. You know where they are. Click, link, subscribe, network. Remember, take your online, offline, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode jam-packed with more incredible humans. For more info, please visit www.nhptalentgroup.com.